We're getting close to the end of the book of Daniel. We're in the last part of Daniel chapter 11. This is an important portion of the scripture here. Anyway, this is a part of scripture that is often skipped by those that are Bible students because it's a difficult book to understand. But it's not so difficult once you just grab a little bit. And then the rest of it is just follows right along. Anyway, we've seen that Daniel is telling the same story over and over and over again. He told us the whole thing in chapter 2. Well, the book of Daniel is actually divided into two sections. We got the first 6 chapters, which are autobiographical from Daniel's point of view, but chapter 2 puts the prophecy in there, which is part of the life of Daniel. Anyway, from there we have chapter 7, which repeats what we had in chapter 2. We're going to go over these things here in just a minute. But then we got chapter 8, which takes only 2 of the kingdoms that were discussed in chapter 2 and chapter 7, and gives us some more detail about that. Then chapter 9, chapter 9 gives us all kinds of detail. And then chapters 10, 11, and 12 are all one vision. And chapter 10 sets up the kind of the scene of the rest of the chapter there. And the thing about the book of Daniel that you need to recognize as you're going through it is the church is not there. We've got the situation of Israel from the time of going into captivity in Babylon out to the coming of Jesus and Jesus being cut off. Then we have a gap. That gap is the church age, and the church is just not in there. It's missing in the book of Daniel for good purpose. Then we get chapter or portions of various chapters, the ones we've talked about. And then chapter 11 that we're in right now, we've come to the part where I believe the church is gone, has been raptured out. And that's where we're starting with our study in this particular section today. Let's go to Daniel chapter 10. Again, this is the scene-setting chapter. It says, "Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people." This is the angel speaking to Daniel, telling him that what he's about to see is what's going to happen to the people of Israel, not to the church, to the people of Israel. What shall befall thy people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. And indeed, we can look back 2,000 years and the vision is still not complete. Anyway, we need to understand that this is related to Israel. The entire book of Daniel is related to Israel. But Israel gives us a timeline of what's happening throughout the world. And so that's very important. We need to understand also that this book was written 500 BC, and it still hadn't completed in our year right now. It's still partly future. Remember also that we saw that through chapter 9 and the 70 weeks of chapter 9, we saw that 69 weeks brought us up to the point where Jesus was going to be crucified. And it told us there in that the prince or the people of the prince would destroy the city, which they did. But not the prince. He wasn't there yet. We're going to be talking about the prince in this study here. Anyway, he was not there at that time, but the people of the prince were there. And he was to come later. Let's remember that in our verses. Oh my, I am. All right. Chapter 9, picking it up at verse 26. And after 62 weeks, remember there were 7 weeks before this, so after 62, that's 62, plus the 7 is 69. After 69 weeks, shall Messiah be cut off. That's Jesus. But not for himself. He was cut off for us. And the people of the prince, that shall come, the people of the prince that shall come, he hadn't come yet. The people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with the flood, and unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Going on into the next verse, it says, and he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. We've got 1 week left in Daniel's 70 weeks. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. For the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. Now that, again, is a prophecy of the future. The things that it's describing there have not happened. Some try to force that into the destruction of the temple in 70 A.D., but there's no way to put that week. I mean, that's 7 years. Jesus would have died in about 30 to 33 A.D., Seven more years would have put it close to 40 A.D., not 70 A.D. Anyway, let's go from there and review our chapters here. Chapter 1 was the time of Daniel being taken into captivity, and Daniel purposed in his heart that he was not going to defile himself. They put him in a multi-god school, but he believed in his one God. Then chapter 2 was Nebuchadnezzar's dream. That was the world empires, all the way out beyond our time, because it, the final portion of that dream is the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw being struck by the stone cut out without hand, hitting it in the toes, destroying the whole image, and the rising up of that stone to be the kingdom of the world. And that's Jesus' return. Chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar set up an idol, and we have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego going into the fiery furnace. Chapter 4 was Nebuchadnezzar's second dream. Nebuchadnezzar became insane, and then he came back and gave us a great testimony of who our God is. His grandson, Belshazzar, became king after that, and he had a party. His party was to be very destructive toward God. And so he took the vessels that had been taken from the temple and used that to serve wine to his guest. Anyway, then chapter 6, we have, by the way, that's when he saw the handwriting on the wall, and that was the end of the Babylonian kingdom. Then we have the Medo-Persian kingdom. Daniel saw the first part of the Medo-Persian kingdom. Somehow, God set him as important in the Babylonian Empire and also in the Medo-Persian Empire. Anyway, chapter 6 was where the Medo-Persians started out, and they couldn't find anything, or the enemies of Daniel, who wanted his position. They were enemies because Daniel was being promoted above them. Anyway, Daniel wound up having to sleep with the lions, but he was the important one in the kingdom. Then chapter 7 was Daniel's first vision, and his vision was of all of the kingdoms and judgment. Then chapter 8, we saw the vision of the Medo-Persian Empire and the Greek Empire, and some details shown there that we didn't have in the earlier vision. Just more details, but the same time. Then chapter 9, we saw the 70 weeks of Daniel. We read just a little portion of that. And that we still have 1 week to be accomplished. Chapter 10, we saw the angels and talked about the heavenly battles. Anyway, the angels there were setting up to tell Daniel again from what we're seeing in chapters 11 and 12. So chapter 11 gives us the details of events that were for the Jews. Let's recall our key verse that we have in the study of Daniel, because this is a key verse, because this is what all of this is all about. God is the one that's in charge. It keeps saying that. All right, verse 21 of chapter 2 says, "And he changeth the times and the seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He revealeth the deep and secret things. He knoweth what is in the darkness, and the light dwelleth with him." This is in the context of Daniel praying for God to give him the revelation of what Nebuchadnezzar's dream was all about. And when he got that revelation, here he is praising God for what he's done. Then we're still in chapter 11. It's a historic intrigue. And we saw in our last study just event after event described of the intrigue that was going on to develop that. And it goes even into the future, which is what we'll be studying as we go on here. Anyway, I have to tell you a story. I tell this each time I teach through the book of Daniel because I think it's just so fitting here. Anyway, in the church where I got saved, we had a prophecy conference every year, and they arranged for well-known pastors throughout the nation to come and speak. And there were a group of churches that got together to do this. And what would happen is the preacher would come in and preach his assigned subject one night at this church, and then he'd move to the next church and the next church and so forth. Anyway, each pastor was given a subject to talk on, a prophetic subject to talk on. And that was where I was introduced to prophecy. I didn't know anything about prophecy at that point in time. Anyway, I was just eating that stuff up. I loved it. I had never heard such before. I'd been to church for 28 years before I got saved. And this prophecy conference was just telling me all kinds of things that I should have known. Now, much of what we've studied here in the book of Daniel. But every night the audience was just packed. Not only the people of the church came, but people from the whole community would come to listen to these pastors. Anyway, we one night, pastor was coming to speak. And by the way, the reason for telling you that the thing was packed is the choir and the pastor staff that introduced the ones that were to be the speakers had to stay on the platform because there was no room for them to come sit down in the audience, so the pastor was sitting up there, and the guy got to speaking. The guy that was to preach that night got to speaking, and all of a sudden, somebody shouted from the audience. Now, I didn't understand what he said, but he shouted, and the pastor just got up on the edge of his chair, and he was looking out in the audience trying to see who in the world is this that's disturbing the pastor that's speaking. But anyway, it got quiet after that, and the pastor was still sitting on the edge of his chair for a while and finally settled back. But the guy was probably, I'm not sure I remember exactly, but probably was speaking on the tribulation, and you'll see why I say that as we go on here. Anyway, midway through the presentation, again, a shout from the audience, and the pastor again is up on the edge of his seat trying to figure out who in the world is this that's shouting out, again, I didn't understand what was being said. So it settled back, and the speaker went ahead with his presentation. Toward the end of his presentation, again, a shout, and I understood it this time. I understood it. The guy that was in the audience was shouting, "Scare tactics, scare tactics." Anyway, after the speaker closed his presentation, I watched the pastor. He got up and he ran back there. He spotted the guy that was doing this. It was one of our newest believers, and he had come to church soused, totally drunk that night. And I tell you, you hear about the things of the tribulation, and you're living a life that is like that. It is scare tactics. Anyway, this is dealing with the 70th week of Daniel. The book of Daniel deals with the Jews. Remember that, the Jews. And all that we're presenting here has to deal with the Jews. And we'll be dealing with the Antichrist as we go through this section here. Now, the outline of what we'll be studying here, we've got the introduction. We've kind of gone through part of that already. But then we'll be looking at the religious persuasion, and that is of the Antichrist. Then we'll be looking at his religious practice, the practice of the Antichrist. Then finally we'll look at his secular activities. So we're going to start, and I'm going to do something that I've done a few times. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to jump ahead so that we read some verses that kind of set the scene for us as we're going here. So let's jump to verse 40 of Daniel 11. It says, "And at the time of the end shall," and the point I'm trying to get here is this is at the time of the end. Remember Daniel chapter 2. What happened at the end? the 10 toes were smashed, and the rising up of the kingdom. That's what we're looking at there, and I want to jump to Daniel chapter 12 and see just a portion there. Again, establishing the time. It says, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people," that is the Jews, "and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to the same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that is found written in the book." Oh, what a good promise that is. "And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt." Now, that tells you where we're headed. The last portion of that we get in chapter 12. But again, this is pointing to the fact that this 70th week is a time that is still future, still to come. And I preface this to say, I don't believe that we will be here. That is, I don't believe that the Christians will be here for this period of time. And when we recognize what this is, we're going to see the book of life opened. We're going to see the tribulation going on. And I believe that we move past the future to the point in our study here. That is, we're going beyond where we live now. And we talked about that in Daniel chapter 9. But again, there are many that claim that this is the 70 AD destruction of the temple, and I don't believe that at all. I have listened to a number of sermons on this just this week, just to see what some are saying about this. And I ran into the Seventh-day Adventists. Oh man, do they have this messed up? They've got this happening to Gentiles, and they bring this to the point of the French Revolution. I don't know how they come to the French Revolution with this, but anyway, there are some interesting interpretations out there. I hope we are interpreting it properly. Let's go to the start of our study, where we see the religious persuasion. And I ask the question, who is God? Daniel 11, verse 36. "And the king shall do according to his will." This king is the prince from chapter 9. He is the Antichrist that we Christians talk about. "And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that which is determined shall be done." Going on into verse 37. "Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all." Now, much of this could apply to Antiochus Epiphanes that we've talked about. But there's some of these verses here that just don't fit Antiochus. And remember, the Maccabees drove Antiochus out of the nation of Israel and were able to cleanse the temple and make it good for the celebrations of the Jewish people. Anyway, that cleansing, of course, we call Hanukkah. But under the Roman rule, he lived during the 69 weeks, then Jesus died under the Roman rule, the end of the 69th week. But we see that Jesus died approximately 30 to 33 A.D., and the temple was destroyed in 70 A.D., so that 70th week couldn't have immediately followed that. Anyway, let's go to the book of Mark for a moment. It says, "Seest thou these great buildings?" It's talking about looking at the temple. The disciples were looking at the temple. Jesus was looking at the temple. It says, "Seest thou these great buildings? There shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down." And this is talking about the destruction of the temple. And we are dealing with the religious persuasion of the Antichrist here. The destruction of the temple didn't fit the abomination of desolation that is described there. Let's go on with some things in Mark here. It says, "But when thou shalt see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judah flee to the mountains." Now, this is speaking of when the actual abomination of desolation happens. It's telling the Jews to flee to the mountains. The word there about the abomination of desolation really means to stand. When you see it stand, then that's the abomination of desolation, not the destruction where it all lays down on the ground. This is a parallel information to what we have in Matthew 24. And Mark says that the abomination of desolation stand where it ought not. Matthew says that it's to stand in the holy place, and we can assume the holy place is to be the temple. The destruction of the temple doesn't allow for something to be standing in there. So this is something that hasn't happened yet. We need the third temple. And we know that there's a lot of preparation going on for that to happen. Going also to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 4 says, "Who oppresseth and exalteth himself above all that is called God." Now this is talking about the same guy. "And that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." Again, this is not 70 A.D. The temple was destroyed. He couldn't show himself sitting in the temple. Anyway, some conclude that the third temple is to be in heaven. Well, I don't believe the Antichrist is going to be there in heaven. So I don't think that fits. But remember that this is all happening to the Jews. And it appears that this Antichrist to come has absolute power like the king of Babylon. And we saw that the king of Medo-Persia didn't have absolute power. Anyway, we don't want to be too dogmatic about some of these things because some are, and they've been proven to be wrong. Anyway, let's go back to Daniel in verse 36 again. It says, "And the king shall do according to his will, and he shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished. For that which is determined shall be done." Now, I am assuming that this is the little horn that we have in Daniel chapter 7, also pictured as the little horn of Daniel chapter 8. And he's going to speak marvelous words, and he's going to do so against the God of gods. Actually, this word is a little hard to define, but it's a word that means that he's going to do miracles. He's going to speak marvelous words, and those marvelous words are miracle words. He's going to perform miracles against the God of gods, and he will prosper. People will want to hang on to him just like they wanted to hang on to Jesus until they wanted to crucify him. But until the stone that's cut out without hands smashes the toes, and all of that's determined upon the Jews. Let's go to verse 37. "Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers." Now, some take that to believe that this Antichrist is to be Jewish. I don't impose that upon the word, but he doesn't. This guy is not going to regard the God that his fathers regarded, nor the desire of women. Some claim that this says that he's going to be a homosexual. Now, I don't believe that at all. It's just going to say that he does not regard women. Now, I have to say there that the church is having a lot of problems right now with wonderful pastors failing in the area of sexual sin. This guy is not going to fail in the area of sexual sin. That's what that's saying. He's going to do fine there. Anyway, but he will magnify himself. He's going to do like Nebuchadnezzar did, where Nebuchadnezzar built an idol and said, "You worship this." An idol of gold from top to bottom, where he had seen the image that God had given him in a dream, that he was the head of gold. He built the whole statue of gold. Anyway, Cyrus, king of Persia, declared God to be the one who gave him his kingdom. Cyrus understood that. Let's read verse 37 again. It says, "Neither shall he regard the God of gods, nor the desire of women, nor any god, for he shall magnify himself above all." He probably, or I've probably mentioned it before, but I am very concerned about pastors falling. And some of them are pastors that I have respected greatly, their ministry and their instruction, but Satan got them. This guy is an atheist. He thinks of himself as being the one that is ahead of all the gods. Anyway, I want to go on into verse 38. It says, "But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver and with precious stones and pleasant things." This word estate is another interesting word here. This is a good translation. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But it's probably not understood properly by most English-speaking people. It's a word that means something to hold up. Now, the pedestal of in the temple that was to hold the hand washing thing, that could fit for this word that is here. That is the laver of the temple. It could mean, though, something like a person's office. And this guy is going to be worshiping forces. And that word could be translated fortresses. But the word God is, in this particular verse, probably should honor the God of forces, probably should be a little g God. But Herod, I want to say built the temple, but he didn't. He remodeled the temple in Jerusalem. He was an architect, and he built many things. And he was one that believed in fortresses also. He's the one that built Masada, and he had a number of other places like that. And he honored those places. Well, the guy that's to come is going to be like that. He's going to honor fortresses, honor places, and he's going to give great gifts to them. But remember chapter 2, verse 21. He, the one and the only God, our God, removeth kings and setteth up kings. This little horn is going to be messing with God. He honors and worships the God of forces. He thinks he can battle God. He honors it with gold and silver and precious stones. Most churches consider the song service a time of worship. But worship includes Bible study. It includes singing. It includes preaching. It includes giving of our gifts and other things. This guy is going to worship by giving it gold and silver to his fortresses. Verse 39. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds. He's going to do this in places where he is, at least he thinks he's safe. And that, again, is what Herod the Great did. He had at least 5 fortresses in the places that he dealt with. But the Jewish zealots took over Masada as which was one of his fortresses, and gave the Roman army great difficulty in capturing that. And here's a picture of Masada. I've been there. It's a place that they give you a ramp to walk up. But fortunately, they have built a cable car to take you up there also. So if you don't want to walk up this high mountain, that steep hill on the ramp that they've built, you can ride up. But anyway, going on to verse 39, thus shall he do in most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. It sounds like he's going to split up the area of Israel for money. He's going to be a crooked politician, but a politician, no doubt. I don't think the guy knows who his God is. He thinks his God is himself. And he offers gold, silver, and precious stones to himself. Now, I don't exactly have gold, silver, and precious stones, but if I did, where would it go? Whose desires would I fulfill? Mine or that of God's? When people see me, I have to ask, what do they think? A religious nut or a self-exalting person? I do speak marvelous things against, or do I speak marvelous things against God, possibly saying things that discourage the church? I'm guilty of that at times. And who or what do you want to honor by the position that, whatever position you have? Where do I invest my time and where do I invest my money? Why would I even call it my money? Because it's really God's money. Verse 40. And at that time, and at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen and many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. Notice that we've got a king of the north and a king of the south here. This is what we had with the Greek Empire, the Greek division of the empire. I listened to a pastor just this week who showed a map that listed the countries surrounding Israel, and he had divided those into 10 nations. I don't know if he had it right, but he had a list. And I listened to others that considered the time of the end to be past. I have to tell you that I don't know what nations will be there in the time of the end. My guess is that somehow there will be a 10-nation group. Why do I guess that? Because the scripture told me so. Anyway, the pastor with the 10 nations had 7 against Israel and 3 that were pro-Israel. I don't think that's the way it's going to work out either. But anyway, it's all future. And so we don't have a good view of it like we did in our past studies. We can tell that there is great conflict, and it's going to be like a whirlwind. Verse 40 again says, and at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships, and he shall enter into countries and shall overflow and pass over. I can tell you that the king of the south is probably related to Egypt. The king of the north is probably this little horn that we've been talking about, and he seems to have great victory. I don't want to speculate much further than that, so let's go on to the next verse. He shall enter into the glorious land. The glorious land would be Israel. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Now, do you find this interesting? Many countries are going to fall, but 3 are not. Edom, Moab, and Ammon are not going to fall. I want you to remember what happens to Israel. They are to run to the mountains. And the glorious land again would be Israel. But I want you to see here. Oops. How did I do that? I want you to see here Edom, Moab, and Ammon. This is Israel here. Edom, Moab, and Ammon. These are the countries right next to Israel. They're not going to fall. They're going to stay there. Remember what happens in Israel. They're to run to the mountains. And if you remember, Moab is where we found the excuse me, I can't think of the name, where we found the caves that are still there. I'll come up with the name because we'll be showing some pictures of it. But let's go on and read some in Matthew 24. It says, "When you shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them that be in Judah flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop come not down to take anything out of the house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor shall ever be. But except those days be shortened, there shall no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened." And again, we have the map that I was showing you, where we see Edom, Moab, and Ammon that are not going to be captured in this thing. Remember, this is dealing with Israel, not the church. The Jews will flee to the mountains or to the desert. Petra, excuse me, I couldn't remember the name of the city that is there in Edom. Anyway, it was a city that was abandoned about 300 AD because of an earthquake that occurred. But it's a popular tourist attraction today. And since it's not going to be taken like the rest of those things, it may well be the place where the Jews will run. Still, it's not easy to get there. And you have to have some special equipment to be able to get there. And it is in mountains. And I have shown you pictures of the city before. This is just a small portion of it. But these are caves that people could easily go and live there. But this is dealing with we're dealing with the secular activities of the Antichrist here, where he's going to be chasing after these various nations and so forth. So let's go on to verse 41. It says, "He shall enter into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon." Now, it's not clear why these are chosen to escape, except that they're not really considered that valuable to some. Going on into Verse 42. And he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. I told you I believe the king of the south is related to Egypt. But he shall have power over the treasuries of gold and of silver, and over the precious things of Egypt, and of the Libyans, and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. Now, Egypt is the one, remember, that started this conflict. And it's not going to escape. Little Horn is going to go after his treasures. He's still not going to go after Edom, Moab, and Ammon. I want you to look at another map here. What we see here is it says that he's going to, he's going after, I'm trying to get my arrows to work here. There we go. Here's Egypt. Here's Libya. And here's Ethiopia. Now, I think Ethiopia today actually touches Egypt. But anyway, these are the areas that he's going to be coming from up here after these countries here. And we just read in verse 43, the Libyans and Ethiopians shall be at his steps. He's going to be there ready to pounce on these nations. But verse 44. But the tidings, that word is, but the tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. There's going to be something coming out of the east and out of the north that are going to trouble him. And here we've got a map. Out of the east is probably out of China. China, maybe India. But out of the east and out of the north, maybe Russia, are going to be troubling him. And we will be looking at some things in the book of Revelation to see some of these same areas. Revelation 9. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year to slay a third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, or 200 million. And I heard the number of them. Verse 17. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, whose breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was a third part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, and the way of the kings of the east, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Get that number, 200,000. That ought to get a lot of attention, recognizing an army coming across from the east and the north that were of that size. But China has boasted of that size army for years, and they have built a highway across from China all the way over toward the Middle East, and the river Euphrates is drying up right now. So these, the east may be China, the north may be Russia. Going on into verse 44. It says, but the tidings of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Remember, he was standing there ready to go into Libya and Ethiopia, and he got these reports of armies coming from the east and the north. It says, but tidings out of the east and the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and to utterly make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Recognize what that's talking about. In the glorious holy mountains, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The Antichrist from Libya and Ethiopia is going to turn, and he's going to plant his things in the fortresses of Israel. And remember, he's the one that honored fortresses, and will set up to battle there between the Mediterranean and the Holy Mountain, that is Jerusalem. That little strip of land where the King of Kings plans to rule from. The world is large, but that strip of land dominates God's plan. The Antichrist's religious persuasion was that he was an atheist. He believed himself to be God. He'll believe that there's no authority over him. He'll believe that there's no book to tell him what to do. And he will remember the question that we ask. I hope he remembers it. Who is your God? And I ask that to you. Who is your God? And whose book do you follow? Then we have there we go. He will do according to his will, the way he practices his religion. He's going to do whatever he wants to do. And whatever he wants, he goes after it. That includes killing others. It includes taking their possessions and telling them who and what to worship. Again, whose will do you follow? Why is it important for Christians to know God's plan, particularly God's plan for Israel? What does that have to do with me? Realize it's a limited view of God's plan, and we've got a limited view in the New Testament. But we need both the Old and the New to fully appreciate God's plan. But in Daniel, we saw 2 kings removed in Babylon. We saw 5 kings in Medo-Persia. We talked about several kings in Greece. We talked about the intrigue that's going to go on in the Greek Empire. Jesus came to the earth exactly at the time that he was to be cut off. God's plan, even for us, revolves around Israel. Remember where this all got started with the Abrahamic covenant. Genesis 12:2 says, "And I will make of thee a great nation, and will bless thee, and will make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing." God chose Abraham for a specific task. They were to show by their works what God can do. They didn't do so well for a long time. Their witnessing was flawed. But 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 and 10 says, "But ye are a chosen generation." That's talking to the church, folks. "But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him who hath called you out of the darkness into his marvelous light, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy." Dearly beloved, I beseech you, as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lust. Oh, I wish that message could get across to the church. Which war against your soul, having your conversation honest among the Gentiles, that whereas they speak against you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they shall behold, glorify God in the day of visitation. Under the new covenant, the church has essentially the same job that Israel had. We need to understand God's plan. We need to be convinced of his plan. We need to be convinced who God is. We need to be convinced of what God is. We need to be convinced of what God does. We need to be convinced of what God will do. And we need to be convinced of God's righteousness. We need to seek to also be righteous. We need to be living under his authority. The book of Daniel should have shown us that God does have authority. He doesn't need our approval. But he's given us the opportunity that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. Are you saved today? Thank you for being with me.